Hetapu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Nefer. This is Qesankh Keperu with another exciting video for you. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Cleopatra is not race swapping. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. If you want to know more about my spiritual teachings, you can scroll down below. I do have 4 ebooks. They're absolutely free. Click on any one of them, download them today, and you can start reading. However, if you want to go deeper down that rabbit hole, you can become a Patreon supporter for as little as $1, $5, $20 per month. It's up to you. You can cancel at any time. And if you are the $20 level Osir contributor, you get all your oracle readings for free. The Patreon gives you access to exclusive videos on the esoteric, videos on how to meditate, proper breathing exercises, how to do lucid dreaming, astral projection. And right now on Patreon, I am running a new series on ancestral curses and your karma. And it deals with trauma within the family and carried over from past lives and how to deal with that from a spiritual perspective. Last but not least, share this video with family and friends so we can get the revolution started. So, Haru Nefer, Grand Rising. I want to talk about this subject because it's really weighing heavy on my heart, my heart. And I have been trying to avoid the controversy on this one, but I have to, again, throw my hat into the ring or really chime in on this because it's really sad. It saddens my spirit to see what has happened. It saddens my spirit to see these racists come out of the woodworks to attack this documentary produced by Jada Pinkett Smith called Cleopatra, just because Cleopatra is being played by a Black woman. And I thought that we as a society were past this. Because when I was growing up, it was common knowledge that Cleopatra was Black. There were publications, there were TV shows being done. And I guess this new generation, whether it be Z or millennials, didn't get the memo. Now, I'm not saying conclusively that Cleopatra was Black. I'm here to clear up some matters. Because a lot of these so-called influencers out there are racist in disguise. And it's disgusting the way they are acting. And I am totally shocked because many of them are individuals I respected and whose channels I followed. Come to find out, they were harboring these racist ideas and thoughts. And the idea of a Black woman playing Cleopatra, who was not a good figure in history, bothers them. The idea of a Black woman playing Cleopatra bothers Egypt and Egyptians who need to shut the hell up because they've only been there for, what, 600 years? They're not the real ancient Egyptians. They're migrants. They are the ones that captured and enslaved Black people. And if you don't like that truth, well, there's a lot more coming. The Egyptians who are upset at Kevin Hart for talking about how we were kings and queens and pharaohs and so forth have taken the white supremacy pill. Because they did not complain when Elizabeth Taylor played Cleopatra. They're not complaining when Gal Gadot is going to play. And there's no way in hell a lily white person like Elizabeth Taylor would be in Egypt. And the way these racists get away with it, because they always say, oh, well, Cleopatra was Greek, as if Black people couldn't be Greeks. We know in Rome, there were Black emperors. Go research Septimus Service, Black Emperor. But I digress. It is disgusting how these influencers keep making video after video, hoping that the documentary would fail. And from what I understand, it got low ratings. But that's not the point. You see, many Black people, or ADOS, African American, FBA, whatever you want to call yourself, freedmen, have taken a step back from this argument because they believe Cleopatra may in fact be white, but they're missing the point. And to them, I am just as disgusted. You see, when that horrible movie came out, The Woman King, all these Black women were jumping up for joy, running to the theaters to see themselves as savages, cannibals, murderers, enslavers, masculine. They're fine with that image of them as a savage, masculine woman. But when Cleopatra comes out, where's their voices? You see, when I talked about how these Black women should not go to see this movie, The Woman King, because in history, they were king queens in Egypt. Example of is Hatshepsut. She was a woman who pretended to be a man and ruled Egypt. And under her rule, she led battles, won battles. Egypt prospered under her. But these Black women weren't interested in her, nor were they interested in Queen T. But when The Woman King came out, having them appear as savages and masculine was their preference. And there's something psychologically wrong with you. And this is where the Black community needs to take a look and examine what's going on with Black women. Because if you're okay with this depiction of yourself as a woman king written by a lesbian white producer, full of historical inaccuracies, because the Dahomey were enslavers, and the Dahomey, every battle they got into, they got their butts kicked. They didn't win any battles. They lost they lost many of their people. Many women died. But for some reason, this idea of masculinity is okay with you, but to be a feminine woman, a strong woman like a Queen T, bothers you, or a Hatshepsut bothers you. And many, many other queens of Egypt were Black. And this is where we get to the influencers who, I really, really liked these guys. But the way that they have been acting is number one, they have shown their ignorance on the subject, so they need to stop talking. And number two, they have revealed themselves as racist. Because not only does the idea of a Black woman playing Cleopatra bother them, but the idea of Tinkerbell being Black bothers them. And the idea of the Little Mermaid bothers them greatly, to where they've made numerous videos on this. Now, I must admit, I don't agree with the Little Mermaid being Black and Tinkerbell being Black. I don't agree with that. But my disagreement is for different reasons. It's not based on racism. Let's break this down. I want to take a look at this because I'm going to show you how these guys are so off course. All right. So this is this is Queen Cleopatra, the controversy of Virginia Pickett Smith's Netflix series Explained. And I believe that Angela Jolie was at one point going to play Cleopatra. Now look at Elizabeth Taylor, her white self playing Cleopatra. I mean, that is a joke. But yet No one in Egypt said anything. There was no lawsuits. You see, when an Egyptian lawyer wants to sue Netflix over this misrepresentation, tells you about his ignorance, it tells you about his racism because it burns him so much. It bothers him so much. But why? See, the reason why many in the African American community have backed away from this is simply because we know who Cleopatra was. You see, Cleopatra was a murderer. Under her rule, Egypt fell. Under her rule, the Library of Alexandria got burned to the ground. She was a sick and twisted woman who in Western society is romanticized. That's right. You have put on a pedestal a woman who murdered members of her own family to ascend to the throne, who is involved in debauchery, sexual perversion, who didn't have enough pride in her culture to continue its legacy. Now, let me get into this, you see, because these influencers, and I'm going to bring out, I'm telling them, I'm going to mention names, all right, as their screen names go. I'm not going to dox them or anything like that. The first one is Mr. H Reviews, a guy I really liked. I liked his reviews of films, but his obsession with Cleopatra has demonstrated to me that he not only does not understand the subject, but the idea of a Black woman playing a woman, a queen of culture and sophistication, is unthinkable. Here's one of his videos right here, Netflix tanking. Look at this body slam by facts and logics. And I'm gonna dispel this. I'm gonna show him what facts and logics are, you know? Because these individuals don't understand anything about facts or logic. Here we go. We got the Little Mermaid here. You see, individuals like Mr. H are fine when Black people are in their place. So they're fine when Black people are subservient. They're fine with having Black people have a position of power as long as they report to white people. And they'll claim they're not racist. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. No one makes this amount of videos if there's not something that's really bothering them. Oh, let's go on. Okay, another one is, and I'm not saying you shouldn't follow these guys. I still like listen to their movie reviews. I still like them, but I'm just greatly disappointed in them. Greatly. Let's look at Ryan. He's another guy I used to follow. And here we go. Woke Netflix hits rock bottom with the Black Cleopatra ratings are embarrassing. Listen, let me tell you something. There's nothing woke about Jada Pickett's Cleopatra. There's nothing woke about it. I'm going to explain that. I'm going to break this down. Okay. So here we go. Everyone hates this. Black Cleopatra hits rock bottom. Look at the hatred of using the word Black. Here we go. Little Mermaid. So Ryan, here we go. This is so bad. Black Cleopatra. Now they're not judging the content of the documentary. What gets them upset is a Black woman playing a queen. But yet, again, not looking at the character and content of this woman who lacked morals, romanticizing her as if she was the epitome of righteousness. And she wasn't. Egypt fell under her rule. She was a horrible, horrible woman. So let me break this down for Ryan and Mr. H so they can understand that this is not race swamping. You see, changing the Little Mermaid and Tinkerbell, that's race swamping. That's Hollywood on its diversity kick. And I don't have time to go into BS about what Hollywood calls diversity because it's not. It's not. Because I don't know why you're going to have the Little Mermaid chasing after a white prince and there's no black prince. Why couldn't the prince be black? Why couldn't the Little Mermaid's father be black? That's racist. Again, like I said, they're okay with black people as long as they report to white people. I'm liberal. I'm not racist. Well, Mr. H and Ryan, yes, you are. Because if you did your homework, you would understand that this issue of Cleopatra goes back decades. This has been argued among scholars as to her racial heritage. And many scholars believe she is of Black descent, African descent, because they trace back her mother, who was a Black Egyptian. And they never talk about her mother. Her mother taught Cleopatra to speak the ancient language, the Egyptian language. Now, as I said, this issue goes back decades. It has already been done where movies and things of that nature have had a Black Cleopatra. Cleopatra Jones, where that's one of the so-called Black exploitation films. And if Mr. H and Ryan would have done their homework and did the research, they would have seen that there are different sets of scholars who have a different take on whether Cleopatra is Black or white. Many say she's white, the others say she's not, she's Black. So it's not the point of whether, when you have scholars contesting and arguing about that, then you have a Netflix make a documentary, shut your mouth, because there is a legitimate reason, factual reason, to believe she could have been Black. But you are so certain, absolute. In fact, I saw Mr. H talk about all the scholars agree. What scholars are you talking about? White scholars, the racist Egyptians? Because as far as I know, there's already been scholars out there doing the research, and even they concluded she may have been more likely of mixed heritage, being half African or Black. But you're not listening to those scholars, and I'm not talking about Black scholars like check out the Diop. I'm talking about your white scholars have come to this conclusion about Cleopatra. So if this issue has been going on for decades, and there are actually white scholars who believe that she is of mixed ancestry, this is not race swapping. You would know that. This is academics who can't come to a consensus. So therefore, Netflix, Jada Pinkett Smith, or whoever have a right to depict her as Black because there is historical evidence for it. But you're discounting that because you don't do any history, any research. So let me just show you just a documentary that was made years ago by the BBC on Cleopatra's sister, Arsinoe, and they were examining her skull. And I'm going to show you the conclusion they came to in this documentary that was done years ago, before even Jada Pinkett Smith was thinking of doing her documentary. Let's take a look at this. Now, this is from, I believe, Cleopatra, Portrait of a Killer. So DNA evidence of the African ancestry of Arsinoe, sister of Cleopatra. Let's watch this.
Dating of the bones, the sex, build, and age of the skeleton at the time of death, and the fact it belonged to someone of high birth, point to one thing. Experts are now convinced that this skeleton is the first forensic evidence of Cleopatra's family ever found. The shape of the tomb, its similarity to the pharaohs, these are all parts of a code, and the whole of it comes together to make a complete picture. At last, we can solve the mystery beyond doubt of who this skeleton actually is. None other than Cleopatra's sister, Arsinoe, Egyptian rebel, Queen of Egypt, murdered on the sacred ground of the Holy Temple of Artemis by Mark Antony on the orders of his lover. But of course, what we haven't known until now is what she looked like. Although the forensic team have only an incomplete skeleton, using our virtual template, we can now rebuild the skull. Hilke and Fabien thought the skull was lost forever, so I'm dying to see how they'll react. We've been looking for the skull for a long time. And we don't have the real thing, but we've got the next best thing, which is a very exact replica.
Cool. Super.
And this is where it should be.
May we touch it?
Yeah, of course.
Of course. No, it's cool.
This is really cool. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
It's really like looking in her face.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is quite another thing to have the skull of her in your hands.
Yeah.
This is a really enormous big feeling. Mm. Wow.
Well, it was worth bringing then.
Definitely home.
Yeah.
Yes. Super.
The forensic team are convinced they've proved beyond doubt that these are the bones of Princess Arsinoe. But rebuilding the skull has unlocked an incredible secret about her ancestry. Until recently, Cleopatra's dynasty was thought to be Greek, European, Caucasian. But some scholars now believe Cleopatra and her siblings had African blood. Could the answer be in this skull?
The distance from the forehead to the back of the skull is...
Now, do you hear that? Do you hear that? They now believe that the family of Cleopatra, based on the skull, the recreation of the skull of Princess Arsinoe, had African Black ancestry. These are white scholars now. This is not Black scholars saying this. These are white scholars saying this, and this is a documentary that was done by the BBC years ago. Years ago. Let's go back to this.
Caucasian. But some scholars now believe Cleopatra and her siblings had African blood. Could the answer be in this skull?
The distance from the forehead to the back of the skull is long in relation to the overall height of the cranium. And that's something that you see quite frequently in certain populations, one of which is ancient Egyptians. Another would be Black African groups will also show that characteristic.
What did she say? Let's hear it again. Let's hear it again for those in the back of the audience.
Cranium. And that's something that you see quite frequently in certain populations, one of which is ancient Egyptians. Another would be Black African.
Now, she makes the mistake of separating, and I'm going to like clear this up because she makes a mistake here herself, of separating Egyptians and Black Africans. She's already said that the skull is similar to both. So if the skull is similar to both, then the ancient Egyptians are Black Africans. They're the same thing. They're synonymous. Let's continue. I mean, this is like the smoking gun here. I'm going to play it again.
Cleopatra and her siblings had African blood.
African blood.
Could the answer be in this skull?
The distance from the forehead to the back of the skull is long in relation to the overall height of the cranium. And that's something that you see quite frequently in certain populations, one of which is ancient Egyptians. Another would be Black African groups will also show that characteristic.
All right. She has told you that Princess Osinaway has African ancestry in her, Black African ancestry, the sister of Cleopatra. Now, what I'm saying to you is this documentary, again, done years ago, is there is enough evidence to say that she could have been Black. No one is saying, and this woman is not giving definitive proof. No one is saying definitively she was Black, but there is a case to be made that she is white, and a case to be made that she is Black. So why is all the hatred and the lies coming saying all scholars, from Mr. H says this, all scholars agree that she was white? No, all scholars do not agree. In fact, the scholars don't agree. Because if you have many on one side of the fence and many on the other side of the fence, then that is not an agreement. That is not a consensus. And as I said before, this idea of her being Black goes back decades. That means that what Netflix has done is not race swamping. Netflix has definitive proof to at least present their side of the story that she could have been Black or mixed ancestry, half Black, half white. But because you're so racist, you try to throw in what Hollywood is doing with The Little Mermaid and Tinkerbell, which is race swapping, to say that Cleopatra is race swapping, as if we just decided we wanted her to be white. I mean, we wanted her to be Black, excuse me. As if we have no justification for making her Black just based on wanting diversity. No, there is scientific evidence and proof that says she may have been Black, African. There is scientific proof, as we have seen in a documentary done years ago, that her family has African, Black African ancestry. And I want you to understand something, because I'm going to end it here. These scholars have played around with labels, definitions, to get around saying, because they do not want to admit that ancient Egypt is a product of Black Africans. It is. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but ancient Egypt, the people that built the pyramid were Black Africans. At the time of Cleopatra, Egypt was in its decline. At the time of Queen T and Queen Hatshepsut, Egypt was at its zenith. So Mr. H and Ryan, I'm asking you to do your damn research. And understand, this is not race swapping, that there is a basis in science and fact to bring this argument up. And I'm also asking you to look at who Cleopatra was. a sick and twisted woman who could not have been fair-skinned, who's not a moral woman, an upright woman, who murdered members of her own family, who slept around. Listen, we don't want to claim Cleopatra. We've got too many other queens to claim who have done great things. But I cannot sit here and allow you to vent your racist rhetoric, and you have no proof, conclusive proof, to say that she wasn't Black. You don't. But you use the fact that most people are ignorant and they watch Hollywood movies like The Gods of Egypt. You see, Mr. H and Ryan, you have never complained of when in Hollywood, in the movies, Black people, white people played Black people with blackface. You didn't say anything about that. You didn't say anything about white people portraying the Native Americans and Asians, wouldn't hire Asian or Native American actors. You haven't got said anything about Hollywood's casting process when still most movies are all white. I don't hear you crying about that, saying anything about that. I don't hear you saying anything about how we big up cowboys who went out there shooting and murdering Native Americans who are only trying to protect their land. So we get these propaganda Westerns that come out. I have not heard you say anything about that. Haven't heard you say anything about James Bond screwing every woman of color. But when a Black man comes out and he has a white co-star and is a possible love interest, everybody freaks out. I don't hear you say anything about that, how racist that is. So don't try and pretend like your anger is because of Hollywood's race swapping. No, it's not. I'm going to make it plain and simple. So, Mr. H and Ryan, and they're not the only two culprits. There's many, many more out there. You're upset because Egypt was the height of civilization. Egypt had advanced technology. Egypt was the height of morality and culture and art and science. You're upset because a Black woman is being seen as something other than masculine, savage, angry, and subservient. That's the only way you accept a Black woman, is to be subservient. To have her seen in one of the most powerful positions in the entire world as ruler of Egypt, it bothers you, doesn't it? It bothers you. Because if you had any sense, you wouldn't really care. In fact, you should be upset of how they're romanticizing a murderer, a killer, and how the history books need to change to portray her as she really is supposed to be. Someone not to be admired, loved, idolized. You see, Ryan and Mr. H, you're okay when Black people are in their place, which is subservient and reporting to white people. But the minute that changes, it bothers you. You're okay with seeing King the Conqueror as long as he's an evil Black man. He's the villain. This is why many of you couldn't stand the first Black Panther movie. A high-tech Black civilization led by a Black man? That bothered you. I know it did. I saw your reviews. And for my people, Black people, especially Black women, you need to do your history. Read. And stop falling for Hollywood propaganda in the sense of feeding you this garbage about the woman king, while at the same time refusing to show you as a true queen warrior. This is Qesankh Ma'Keperu Surma Antudi. My aunt is the goddess Heteru, the beautiful goddess Heteru. Until my next video, Amen Ra.